Department of Home Affairs has terminated a Wi-Fi deal that would have transformed some of its offices into an advertising platforms for sports betting company Betway. The department had said that this was a pilot project which was set to provide free internet to 25 Home Affairs offices, and that the funding model relied on advertisement. A political party, Mzansi, has been at the forefront of advocating for government to tackle South Africa's rising gambling crisis by introducing reforms to transform the industry. Last week, the party issued formal questions to the minister about this. We are now joined by Mzansi's Member of Parliament, Makashule Gana. Makashule, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. Let's start off with what prompted you to write those questions to the minister following revelations of this particular deal.
Thanks very much, Aldrin. Good morning to you. So what prompted me to ask the minister a question was, at first, we've been running this campaign around gambling and sports betting advertising, the proliferation. We even have a petition to that effect. But then I saw a user on TikTok that indicated that the Edenvale Home Affairs office was littered with Betway advertising that purported to offer free Wi-Fi to the people that are going to Home Affairs. And then we went to investigate to check whether that is true, and we found it to be true. We first asked the Minister of Trade and Industry whether he believes that this is the right way of handling this particular issue, which he said it's problematic. So we then asked the Minister of Home Affairs to understand what is the nature of the contract that they have with Betway. And we have since, based on the article that was shared yesterday, established that actually there's a middle player or a middleman between Betway and Home Affairs, that the contract is with this middleman, Gesha Media, that is then contracted to Betway. What we have a problem with, Aldrin, it's not the provision of Wi-Fi. If companies want to provide Wi-Fi, they must do so, but they must not overly advertise their products. Because what Betway did in Home Affairs offices, not only in Edenvale, was then to use the opportunity to then market and advertise their betting products, which is something that we are totally against. There's just already over-proliferation of gambling advertising in South Africa. And so we are still waiting for the answers. Whilst we take note that the department says they scrapped the deal, we still want official answers in terms of the nature of this contract, who were the players in this contract, and how much was it paid for this contract.
Yeah, and according to that Sunday World article, the deal was signed back in 2023 when Aaron Motsoaledi was still the Minister of Home Affairs. And again, he said that he can't comment on this because he's no longer with the department. But if this has been going on since then, what does it tell us about oversight, at least from parliamentarians themselves? Because this should have been picked up, even if it's a pilot project.
So ourselves, when we got elected, Aldrin, we started running this campaign oversight on these matters. But, generally, people were accepting that gambling advertising should happen in the manner that it's happening. It's only when we started asking questions that people are waking up to the reality that gambling addiction is actually bad. Even the World Health Organization has listed gambling addiction as one of the mental illnesses that are problematic. And so that's why now people are starting to take notice that there's something wrong that's happening in the gambling and sports betting space. I guess people at first felt like there's nothing wrong. People are receiving free Wi-Fi. But if that free Wi-Fi comes at the expense of over exposure to gambling, then we as society have a responsibility to say, no, that's not correct. Because if the free Wi-Fi, for instance, was offered by a cigarette company or an alcohol company at the Home Affairs office, everyone will be up in arms. So we expect that as society, we should be up in arms when this free Wi-Fi is offered by betting companies overly advertising. So what I said, I don't have a problem with Betway offering free Wi-Fi. But what should happen is that there should be a plain paper. In the same way that you have a plain paper in your office, Aldrin, that says this is the Wi-Fi password. It must be a plain paper that says this is the Wi-Fi password without the advertising. Because this is not the first time. You remember there was the issue of another gambling company that purported to donate school bags to underprivileged poor learners, but those bags were making the learners, the school children, to be walking billboards for that betting company. So this is just another way that betting companies are exploiting to try to have overexposure of their products, and we find it distasteful. We find it to be extremely problematic, and they need to be removed all over the place.
Yeah. Now tell us, how do you have this conversation, and also with the proposals that you have made as Rise Mzansi, when you have political parties that are actually receiving donations from, as the Sunday World Report indicates, Martin Marshall, who they link to Betway. He's a multi-billionaire, one of the tech giants who's also donating to political parties, actually with the IEC's political party funding declaration list. He's one of the top 3 political party funders in the country, alongside Petrus Mutsipe. 35 million rand to the Democratic Alliance, 30 million rand to Action SA, and according to this article, also 4 million rand to Build One South Africa. So these are all now political parties that are represented in Parliament. And the donations would have helped them to secure those seats in Parliament to a certain extent. Now, how do you have this debate when you also have the instance of this individual being linked to Betway?
So for us, the big problem is the advertising. And we have continuously raised these particular issues around the times that the adverts are placed out. When people donate to political parties, and we encourage people to donate to political parties, it should not be with the expectation that Parliament will be stopped from doing its work. Parliament must continue doing its work, and I expect the MPs of the parties that you have listed to support the regulations that the minister says is going to introduce. That's going to limit gambling advertising. Once we are done with gambling advertising, the next point of call for me and Rise Mzansi will be the taxes that these gambling and sports betting companies are paying for the damage that they are causing to society. So we are starting with advertising. Once that's done, and we continue to be in conversation with Minister Tau and Deputy Minister Godlimpi to say, let's speed up the regulations on advertising. Once that's done, I will then continue to have a conversation with Treasury and other provincial gambling boards to ensure that we relook at the taxes that these companies are paying. So for me, that the owner of Betway has donated to political parties does not remove the fact that I will have an expectation that the members of political parties that he would have funded will support this, because we believe it's in the best interest of society that we limit gambling advertising and the exposure, especially protecting the minors and the most vulnerable in society.
Yeah, and in conclusion, speaking about legislation, I don't know, is it difficult to legislate this particular industry, because also gambling is a provincial competency, like the various provincial governments have their own gambling boards?
So it's not difficult. So we have the National Gambling Act. The custodian of the National Gambling Act is the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, and also he has the powers to convene the National Gambling Policy Council, which is made up of all the provincial gambling boards. So when it comes to some regulations, especially regulations relating to advertising, it's not something that you leave to provincial gambling boards, because when someone advertises on TV, even at the Home Affairs Office, they cannot then claim that, no, it's in the province. Home Affairs, it's a national competency. So even when they advertise on TV, on radio, on social media, they do not have that limit. That's why we expect the minister with speed act in the same speed that we see in countries like Kenya, wherein they are relooking at the gambling advertising. We expect that very soon there will be new regulations that will indicate how and when gambling and sports betting advertising can take place. This is something that we are committed to and we want to see happen. We do not want the minister to pass the buck to provinces and claim that he does not have the power. We have pointed to him and we have had a conversation to say, no, actually, you have the power to do this. You don't have to wait for the provincial gambling boards to agree. The legislation empowers you to do this. Whilst we work to amend the National Gambling Act, there are things that we can do that do not have to wait for legislation. It can be done through regulations as empowered by the National Gambling Act as it sits at the moment. And we expect the minister to act with speed in the same way that other countries like Kenya, like France, like the UK, like Australia are starting to act with speed to curtail the over-proliferation of gambling advertising and the damage that gambling is causing to society.
Yeah, and especially teenagers as well that are seemingly being targeted. Thank you so much for your time. Makashule Gana is Rise Mzansi's Member of Parliament there around the concerns around advertising of gambling.